Hello again. This is twice in one day. It's wild. It's
I know, right?
amazing. Now, for those who came here by accident, who don't know what this is, my name is Sean Shapiro. Joining me on the screen is Scott Marshall. He's a safe driver. He's with Trubicars, and this is the new driver show until we come up with a better name for it. But it is a live Q&A that is directed. In other words, we've got some things we want to share with you, but this is really a show for answering questions of new drivers, not the drivers who want to customize their cars and want to know if it's legal to put a turbo in, but the ones who want to know about being safer, the ones who want to focus on learning how to do the right thing behind the wheel, be calm, get good instruction, what to do. Yeah. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I guess I guess we should start with some background.
I like your background. It's got police and all that stuff there. That's not the background you're talking about, though.
I'm thinking like, who are we? Why are we here? Those that watch Ask a Traffic Cop, those that subscribe to the channel, well, they probably already know me, and they may have met you if they've caught the last couple of episodes of Ask a Traffic Cop because you've popped in
Yeah.
for quick bits. And if they were around years ago, you were on once a week on the show.
Yeah, every Friday, mostly every Friday. So I am Scott Marshall. I am the safe driver. I'm on different social medias and whatnot, and blog and podcast, and just been around for 35 years in road safety. And I'm here with Trubicars, which is not a driving school, but it's an information. We write curriculum for driving schools. So we're here to offer advice to and guidance. We're a guide for new
Guidance.
drivers, and we want to help you. Yeah, we want to help you succeed as your goal as becoming a licensed and safe driver.
And
So
that's a big
that's why
thing.
we're here.
And now, since you said your background, I'll do my background. My name is Sean Shapiro, and I'm a police officer with the Toronto Police Service. I work at traffic safety programs at Traffic Services, which is the citywide police traffic unit. We do investigation, we do collision investigation, highway traffic act enforcement. But my role is a little different in that I am a traffic safety and traffic law educator. I don't teach law per se, but I teach what the consequences of certain driving activities are. And we've always been able
Yeah,
to cover both sides of the same coin. In other words, if you do the right thing, you avoid the kind of stuff that I get to issue you, which is tickets. And where Scott educates and teaches about being safer, I am the consequence for when you are unsafe. So really, it's really is the coin. We need a coin that has your face on one side, mine on the other. I think that would work,
that's right.
and it would both would have the same
So yeah,
haircut.
I'm here so that that's right. I'm here so that you don't meet Sean.
Yes, or any of my colleagues. And I think that's great. So I hope that we can make this a regular thing. But this is really geared for new drivers, and we have folks who are coming in through the other planet here. Well, we're on all the platforms, and
Yeah,
and that's why it's so cool because we're currently broadcasting on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, linked everywhere. And if you got questions, we'd love to hear from you. But
yeah, for sure.
I figured we'd start this off by discussing how to get a license. You're either not old enough or you're old enough but haven't started the process. What kind of things do you do to mentally prepare for the process? What kind of obviously you can go and write a test and get a G1. What do you do to
Yeah.
prepare even before that?
So I think the first thing is mentally prepare. This has to be something that you want to do, not so much that your family or friends want you to do, but this is something that, okay, I'm ready. Because driving, we talk about it, my kids taking driver training and my kids doing this, my kids is an adult task. Driving
Oh, we're having technical difficulties.
is an adult task, and it takes a lot of responsibility. The reality check really is once you know that you're mentally ready, then
He has words of wisdom, and we're frozen
uh,
for some reason. So
start
I don't know if you can hear this,
start
but we're having a little bit of a jump in your video. really being still.
Yeah, you were frozen. Now, there we go. So, oh, I
It's
heard
always at
you.
the when you it was almost poetry at just when you froze.
Was it? Oh, I hope you
It
got
was
a
so
good
good, and then
screenshot.
it was just
Normally, it's a funny face I have. So I don't know how much people heard of that. So I'll just do a quick synopsis. Make
yes.
sure you're mentally ready to begin the process. And in Ontario, you have to be 16. If you want to start, if you're not quite 16 and you want to kind of get mentally prepared, read up on stuff. Um, but yeah, and if you're a parent of a teen, just because they're 16 doesn't mean they should go. But also, as a parent of a teen, make sure that you are mentally ready because you're going to be their practice person.
And that is a whole other discussion, and that is whether or not you're the right practice person for the job.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe in a family, mom and dad just don't have the patience for it. Maybe choose an uncle or an older sibling, which they have, as long as they qualify as a supervising driver, they have to have a G license. It must be licensed for a minimum of 4 years. But it's not just that you're driving around with them. You're another set of eyes. So you're there to say stop, and they should, because they might have missed. Right? As long as everybody in the family is before it.
And we see so many people who wait much, much longer in life until they get their license. And some in their 30s, 40s.
Yeah,
Heck, there's people in their 50s.
that's right. I mean, part of being mentally ready, and depends on where you live too. If you live in an area where you have a lot of transportation options, then maybe that's just not the right time. You don't need to. And there's an added cost, obviously, with driving. Getting a driver's license is one thing, but that's the cost of ownership, insurance, maintenance, fuel. All these other things have to be put into consideration after you get a license, because you have no experience if you don't have a record that you've proven that you've been driving, which is insurance.
And the only way to get experience and build that history is to get experience and build that history. There's no real shortcut,
No.
save and except for some training that gives you on paper some experience.
Yeah, and the things too of driver training is that it can actually do experience. You might think that it gives you knowledge, but you're giving situations where, well, if this happens, you should try this. If this happens, you should do this. Instead of waiting till something happens and then figuring, holy crap, what do I do now? So you can teach your mind to respond ahead of time.
Okay. So you've done your learner's permit. You've made the commitment. You're mentally ready. You've got your learner's permit. You've even got someone you trust to sit next to you and be your guide on this journey. Someone that's not going to stress you out, yell at you, cause you anxiety, because that's important. We talked about that a couple days ago. Where do we just say, okay, I'm driving to school, I'm driving to work, I'm driving to the movies, or should there be a plan in place?
Well, there really does need to be a plan. One of my favorite students over the years is the person who knows which is gas, which is brake, and that's it. Getting a lot of experience prior to taking professional lessons can work to your disadvantage. And if it's to your disadvantage, you're going to have to unlearn before you can learn properly. And there are guidelines for the government to be able to pass a road test, whether you go to the road. It's that simple. I need to be smooth behind the wheel. So if you're using the bad habits from a family member or a friend, that's not going to help you, really. Like palming the steering wheel, not going to help. So that's part of your
You just
plan.
reminded me.
Get,
The slight delay. I don't know what that was, but I was going to say you
I
just
don't know.
reminded me when you said smooth, and it reminds me of that smooth is fast, and fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. Wow.
Yeah, well, actually, that's accuracy is the thing, right? So being in a position to operate the vehicle is key, and making proper decisions, because it's not just you on the road. If you're riding your bike in the playground when you're a kid, just doing the playground. But now you're on public roads. You have other people with you. Getting the feel of the gas and brake, as I said, and then taking professional lessons is something that I think is really beneficial. And someone asked this morning when I was on for your regular show, what happens if you can't afford it? Could there be government subsidy?
Mhm.
I mentioned that a lot of driving schools do have a payment plan available. You think about the cost and you weigh it out over what you can learn and how it can protect you. And it's not just about making right and left turns, it's about anticipating the actions of other drivers, other road users, and then knowing what you can do. And and you have to, you know, do more than watch YouTube videos to learn how to drive.
But they do help.
Yeah.
A question from Christine. Hi, I have an expiring G1. Is it best to complete my G2 ASAP or just wait until it expires?
Depends how soon it's expiring. As far as going for the G2, one of the things is go when you're ready, however long that may take you. Um, Either way, you're going to have to renew it in order to continue, so you can get your full G. If you're really close to having your G1 expire, take the lessons, practice. You don't have to pay the full fee because you haven't taken the road test portion. So continue with that, and that's really your choice. But I think it's a comfort zone, and I don't know if I can answer your question as heartily as I could, because I don't know how comfortable you feel. Don't try the G2 because your time is up. Try your G2 because you know you can drive alone without anybody's assistance.
It's not about shooting your shot and just having the luck of the draw that you're going to get through it and move on. It's
Right.
about being ready, taking the test that is simply recording your confidence. You can pass at that point.
That's
Now
right.
you can renew, like you mentioned, and if you get to the G2 and you're not ready for your G, my understanding is you can retest your G2 again and extend that G2, but you still have to do the same test you did to get your G2.
Yeah, and knowing how people feel about taking road tests, like I said at the start of that question, is if your G1 is really close, you may want to continue with that because it's a lot easier to do a written test than it is an on-road test. A little calmer.
Well, funny. The more you test, the more generally it's a practice thing. If you actually do your G2 test twice, maybe that's even good practice for getting your next level. I don't know. Is it the same as anything?
I think it depends if you have like testing anxiety, or you didn't have a positive experience with the examiner, the road conditions, the location, and that might have caused some anxiety. And sometimes anxieties hold you back, right? So it's about getting over that hump and maybe trying a different location.
Now, here's a question from Neha, who is actually the reason this whole episode and discussion began, because she said to me, "Could we have a special just uh, for new drivers?" So this whole episode is for you. How not to be scared of driving on the highway and/or next to semi trucks?
Okay, so let's go with the second part first. So next to semi trucks, don't stay beside them. Stay back far enough that you're behind them, but in the next lane. So if they're in the right lane, you're in the left lane. Stay back far enough until you can get completely past them, right? Drive beside space. And then once you decide, okay, I'm going to go past them, have a quick glance and at their wheels to see if they start drifting toward the lines. If they aren't drifting towards their lines, don't stare at them, because remember, where you look is where you go. Make quick glances. And if they're still staying in their lane, keep going. Make glance, look ahead, glance, look ahead, glance, look ahead. And from there, um, you'll get past them and make sure you can still see them in the rearview mirror. So that way, don't stay right beside them, especially on a windy day or a rainy day, because the rain kicks up off the wheels and they have 18 of them.
Now, I got to tell you, Neha, that I have been driving since the day I turned 16, and I don't want to stand or hang out next to 18 wheelers. I know that there's risks there. So you don't feel badly if you feel uneasy next to them. You should. They're dangerous to hang out next to. They're big and they can't see you in all positions. There's large blind spots. So managing your time in and around large vehicles is something that it should be done with caution.
Yep, I totally
In
agree.
terms of anxiety, one thing with highways is I think it's backwards, but I remember always being told that highways or expressways are actually safer and generally have fewer collisions than on side roads. So if you're comfortable on side roads, you're actually in a space where it's generally higher risk. It's just
That's
not
right.
as fast.
That's right. If you think about the positives versus the negatives, the pros and the cons, um, on an expressway, um, you don't have the traffic lights, you don't have cross intersections, pedestrians, uh, things that can create issues. You have different issues. You have a higher speed. So if you want to get comfortable with driving at a higher rate of speed, do it in stages. Start on a 70K road,
Hmm.
right? Get familiar with going that fast. Then go to an 80K road. If you're going to go something over 80, you do. If you're a G1 licensed driver, you need to be with a driving instructor to go over the roads that are posted above 80.
And let me just
In
clarify,
the
driving
400
instructor
series,
being an actual licensed instructor with a driving school, not a licensed driver
yeah,
who's instructing you. It's very different.
yeah. So a professional instructor versus a friend who said, "Yeah, I'll teach you." Um, but then once you get accustomed to going at a higher rate of speed, going onto the 100K road, when you do get your G2 or your G, you will feel a little bit more comfortable. Plan the time of day you're going to go on. Plan the location. So maybe choose one that is less busy or at a time that's less busy. You may have to travel further out of the core of the GTA before you get that opportunity, but it's still an opportunity to do that.
And at the end of the day, saddle time in motorcycle terminology or seat time, it's all about getting more comfortable doing it more. So if it's something you're scared of and you don't do it at all, you're probably going to continue to have that fear. If you do it in stages like Scott mentioned, and you continue to develop confidence, the more you do it, the more skill you develop with it, and it just becomes more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I've been training for years, as I've said, and many times I remember having one student in particular who was very afraid of going 100 kilometers an hour on the expressway. So we built up to it. We were choosing roads that were 70 and 80 prior to I planned my route to get onto the expressway. And we got on the expressway. It was a quieter section. And I promised her, I said, try for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, you didn't like it, we'll exit, we'll change seats, and I'll do the rest. And after 5 minutes, I asked how they were feeling, and they said, I'm okay. We drove on it for almost 30 minutes.
That's awesome.
And and years later, they reached out to me, and they end up being a long haul truck driver.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was
I
good.
got a question that's coming in, and it is: can I go over the speed limit to pass a semi or other vehicle going 100 so that I can feel safe? And I've got an answer for it. It may differ from what you teach, so we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, so speeding is speeding. Those who watch this regularly is important. Doing something to get you out of danger is still a priority because being in a dangerous situation is never a good feeling or could end up in a bad result. So if you have to do a few seconds to get out of the danger zone and then go back, get out of the danger zone. It's the same thing about driving on the paved shoulder to avoid a vehicle that is losing its load. You're not supposed to drive on the shoulder. It's supposed to be for emergency situations. Well, this is an emergency situation as well. So, with the regulators on the Ontario transport trucks being able to go up to 105, that's it, right? So, don't forget you can also back off. So if they're going slow, and the worst case is when you see two trucks side by side on a two-lane highway, and they're both at the maximum speed, just be patient, stay back far enough that you can still see up ahead.
So that actually is interesting because, and I agree with you. Exactly what you just said, I agree with, because I say all the time that there's never an excuse to speed, but there's always that one situation. And I had that this morning where somebody just was in my blind spot, wouldn't get out of wouldn't let me in.
Yeah.
I couldn't slow down. The only option was to accelerate into a safe spot. Otherwise, the risk of collision was real. So I did accelerate above the speed limit for a very short time, and then I got right back into where I was supposed to be. Could I have been ticketed for speeding? Yeah, I could have. Technically speaking, I could have. Could I have articulated why? and yeah, I could do that too, but that's a very unique situation. Separate from when someone says, "Well, I have to go to the hospital. I got to go fast." That's
Yeah.
different. That's it's an emergency. I understand, but that's a 911. Have an experienced, dedicated driver who's also stabilizing a patient. I think that's different. That we don't want someone racing above the speed limit to go to a destination and drive at high speed the entire way. This
Yeah.
is avoid a collision, and that's it, and then get back into safety.
Yeah, exactly. So, in a situation like that, a week ago, or a couple weeks ago, I was in the US and I was on one of their interstates and I was passing a truck and they were going a little bit slower and that's fine. So I was still, within the speed limit, but they started moving over and I didn't have much of a shoulder on my left. So I had to accelerate because if I didn't, again, I was almost at the cab. So there was still a lot of trailer behind. If I hit my brakes, I still would have been struck. The shorter exit was ahead, so I gunned the gas and had that second and a half of exceeding the speed limit, but it saved my vehicle, my wife and I. So you got to do what you have to do sometimes because there are no other options.
So, how do you then address the fact that with new drivers, the fact that so many vehicles, so many people are choosing to break the law on speed? And then the excuse that I often hear when new drivers are speaking to me is, "Well, I'm going with the flow of the traffic, so that's what I have to do legally."
Uh, yeah, I hear that line a lot, and it's sometimes the flow is going below the speed limit, and if you were in the far left lane, and I remember writing an article for my blog of that, that the passing lane is not the fast lane; they're all the same, and because it's referred to as a passing, slower traffic keeps to the right, things like that. But if you're in the far left lane and where you're typically going to see a lot of drivers going quicker, why are you there? You don't have to be there. And doing lessons with new drivers, we're on the expressway, we're on a secondary highway, with a multi-lane one, and where's the flow? The flow's way up ahead and way behind. Quite often, we're alone. We're
Hmm.
not causing any issues. And when we do catch up with the flow, they're not at the speed limit. So there's many times that you don't have to exceed the speed limit. You really don't.
I challenge people all the time because I don't speed. I set it and forget it. I use my cruise control sometimes, especially for long haul highway. And my drive to work is actually a long stretch, and I use the cruise control. I don't go above the speed limit. I stay in the right lane. I never have to touch my brakes because everyone is busy passing me on the left, and they're on and off their brakes. It's like strobes because they're constantly having to reduce their speed for the
Yeah.
next obstruction or change lanes, and they're very, very active. I have a very relaxing drive where I can focus on driving, and it's like slow motion to some degree. And I don't mean that like I'm going so slow it seems like slow motion. I mean when something happens in front of me, I have enough time to respond to it. I even have the pause to predict what's about to happen, as opposed to having it thrust in front of me and I have to make an immediate response to avoid danger.
That's right. And one of the things is that ties in with the speeding aspect is because where we look is where we go. If you do have traffic ahead of you, if you happen to be staring at the back of the vehicle directly in front of you, you will catch up to that driver and you won't realize it. You're going to be shortening your following distance and you'll be going quicker than they are. And then you're going to have to come off your gas or you're going to have to brake. And then you do the same thing again and you'll get the same result. So then you have to come off the gas, you're going to have to brake, and you'll be doing this over and over again. So to avoid that problem, look ahead of that vehicle because your peripheral vision will determine that you're gaining on them, that you're
Mhm.
increasing your speed. And part of moving your eyes is seeing your speedometer and so knowing how fast you're at.
Checking in and getting a feel for it. And if you're approaching quickly the person in front of you, you might be going too fast. But there is a balance. There is a good place to be, and speeding really isn't one of them. But staying to the right is a really good practice, and that's an entirely different subject because we have questions of all sorts, and I want to make sure that everyone who's watching knows who we are and what we're doing here today. Because this is not Ask a Traffic Cop, although you can ask us questions. My name is Sean Shapiro. Joining me on screen is Scott Marshall, and we're talking to new drivers. This is a show different than Ask a Traffic Cop, where we talk about tint and loud stereos and screeching wheels and lowering and customizing. We're talking about what you need to know to be a safe driver as a new driver who wants to be responsible, get their license, and be safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a question. Actually, it's more of a statement. Let's see here. Please inform new drivers not to tailgate.
Yeah, I personally do that. That is one of my pet peeves. Um, I would joke around saying if I got a dog, I'd call my dog Peeve. That way he'd be my pet peeve. Uh, Tailgating is something, and here's the thing. Uh, when I see new drivers, and as the question came out, quite often the new driver gets their information from an experienced driver. And every time, doesn't matter what year, it was in the 80s, 90s, doesn't matter. I would ask experienced drivers, what's the minimum safe following distance? And they would often tell me 2 car lengths. Thanks for playing. We have lovely parting gifts for you. It's not. It's not because here's why. First of all, your eyes gather the information. The information your eyes get sends a message to your brain. Your brain determines this is wrong and sends a message to your foot to do something when it comes to the following distance. So you need time. Time is not car lengths. 2 car lengths at 30 kilometers an hour is not 2 car lengths at 50 versus going at 80 versus going at 100. Uh, the most commonly reported collision in all of North America, not just in Ontario, is a rear collision. So 2 seconds is like bare. I'd rather see 3 seconds and 4 seconds. And before those who say, no, no, people will cut you off, you'd be surprised how many don't. You really would. So I had one of the things I've done for years is train licensed driver and driving instructors, as you know, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a licensed driver who wanted to become an instructor who didn't believe that it was not 2 car lengths, and they said the same argument. People cut me off. So they had about a 30-40 minute drive home each day. I said, okay, tell me how many people cut you off versus how many didn't, and they were adamant. Next day I said, so I don't want to talk about it. It doesn't happen as often as you think. It really, really doesn't. But it's all about having enough response time. You need time to see what's happening, time to make a choice, a decision, and then time to respond to that decision. And so it's the new driver is often getting the information from the experienced driver. Now, the experienced driver, um, they'll argue that, no, I've been doing it for years and there's nothing wrong with it. Well, you haven't been in a situation yet. So there is stuff wrong with it. I'm sorry.
It's funny you say that because it is not the fact that you've not been involved in a collision or had a problem is not an indication that you're doing the right thing. It means that you have been very lucky up until now.
Yeah, exactly. And I was out with a licensed driver, and they said, I've never been in a collision, but the way they were driving, said, yeah, but how many have you caused?
Interesting point.
Yeah.
We
So,
very
yeah,
rarely realize the wake of destruction in our path.
that's right. That's right. And here's the thing. So you see this, and I made a long commute for years to my office, and I would see the collisions on the expressways, and quite often it was more than 2 vehicles involved. So if the middle driver rear-ended the first driver and the third driver rear-ended the middle driver, if you're driving like them, why are you any different? It's just a matter of time. But don't teach that to your kids,
Yeah, if you
right?
have to make yourself your best self when you're driving, when you have an audience, and you say teaching to your kids, and I want to put this back in the background while I get this thought out. We start teaching our kids to drive well before they are at age 2 drive.
Oh yeah,
We start teaching when we're the examples and they're in the back seat in their child seats, watching mom and dad use their phones, drive aggressively, yell and scream and get angry, accelerate, with aggression. These are all things that are then passed on as normal and acceptable behaviors because mom and dad did it.
that's right. I used to say that we have spies among us, and it's really easy to you watch little kids as they grow up and they start emulating the behavior of other people and things like that. So what's the difference? And they don't necessarily realize it's right or wrong. It's just what they've seen their entire life that they can remember.
Well, now I can jump to that other question.
Okay.
And it was, what about passing trucks while you're on a motorcycle? I don't want to sit by them for miles. Uh, I think that's very interesting because we have so many options besides passing. But if you were going to sit next to them, what else could you do?
Uh, I really don't like sitting next to transport trucks. I really don't. And so because of that, I don't. I'd rather go slower and stay back. if I can't pass. So kind of like an idea so many years ago, one of my friends, I taught his son when his son was 16. And his son was trying to explain to his dad about not sitting beside trucks. And my friend and I, he's one of the group of friends, we go fishing every fall. And I was driving one year and just out of the blue, he said, now I understand. And I'm thinking, what, the meaning of life? Like, what do you understand? And so then he explained why he was watching me. He was watching me hang back until I can get past. If that meant on a multiple lane expressway, doing a lane change to help me get past, putting a buffer of space between, because even though they're big and heavy and what, they can still move into that next lane pretty quickly.
Hmm.
So why put your life in the hands of the person next to you?
And
You do have
just to
options.
recap, you don't have to pass them necessarily unless
Yep.
you can do it lawfully. And hanging back is always an option,
Yep.
because if the other option is sitting next to them for a period of time, it means that you're not planning on going faster necessarily, which is good. Which means you can go slower, get behind them, and then maintain the same speed.
Yep.
If that was something, it doesn't always mean passing them. And something that many people don't realize: when you pass someone, where are they? They're behind you. When problems occur, like, I don't know, they lose control or crash, who do they crash into? They're coming back to you. At least if you're behind them, you can see what they're doing. You can make
That's right.
plans to avoid problems. So think about that. Something to chew on.
That's right.
Someone has a quick question about calling 922. I think they meant 911, unless there's somewhere where 911 is 922. But you can in Ontario, and it may
Yeah.
be different in other provinces. In Ontario, even if you didn't have a Bluetooth, even if you didn't have a connection, you can simply pick up your phone to call for an emergency. What is an emergency? Well, it's something where there's an immediate risk to life or yours or another's,
Yeah.
a collision, a major problem, a crime, something happening. It's not to call home and tell someone to feed the dog.
Yeah, exactly. And I did use 911 while I was driving home one day. There was a pedestrian sitting on the 427. And so didn't know what the issue was, immediately called and spoke to the dispatcher, and hopefully everything was good.
We have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. One, simply reminding people to always check your blind spots. And I think that that's a huge thing about being a new driver is not getting that tunnel vision and just staring out the front window and realizing that mirrors are important and shoulder checks are important. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so being aware, so we talk about mirrors first. So before a driver goes into your blind spot, they're going to be visible in your mirrors. So having your mirrors set up correctly is helpful, is important. You want to be able to see what's coming up from behind. So we talk about the side mirrors. The side are actually outside rearview mirrors. You're not necessarily seeing everything to the side, which is why having a quick glance into your blind spot is a good idea. We've always talked about it being a blind spot versus shoulder check. I'm not checking my shoulder. I'm checking my blind spot, and it's a mentality. So before changing lanes, even if you're pretty certain, nothing wrong with doing a second check just to get into confirming your opinion.
Because things change.
Yep.
You're not looking at a photograph that will then freeze until you just decide to take action. And I think we forget how much ground we pass from the time that we check and then check again. We're constantly moving and things can change. So
That's right. And if you're on a multi-lane road where you have more than two lanes, someone from the third lane might go to the middle lane while you're wanting to go to the middle lane, and your mirrors don't always see that. So having a quick glance, and motorcycles are also smaller than
for
cars.
sure, and especially at night. And this question here is advice on how to drive safely at night. Uh, is it really different than in the day?
Yeah, it is. There's often glare. You've got, especially if the road is wet, or glare from other headlights, neon signs. Things are a little bit different. Street signs are harder to see. Road signs are harder to see. Although the paint is reflective when your headlights hit it. But whether you're driving in the city or driving on a rural road, it does take a little bit of time to get used to it. The other thing that can happen is something called night myopia. Myopia is nearsightedness, which I have, hence the spectacles. And so night myopia means that in daylight hours, you can see clearly. Everything is fine. But at night, with the low light conditions, things become blurry. So if you are finding that things are blurry, uh, the easy solution is corrective lenses. So you might just need to wear glasses at night, but not in daytime. So don't
Interesting.
ignore the fact if it's blurry, go to an optometrist or an ophthalmologist and get your eyes tested. It should be
Actually,
at
that's a
least
good.
every 2 years.
I was going to say you should get them checked regularly
Yeah,
anyway. Vision health is not just I can't see well, let's go check. You want to catch things before they become problems, and there's lots of great things. So, having the best vision available to you will actually help you make yourself a better driver.
that's right. Absolutely, and don't ignore it. And if signs are starting to get blurry, and you know that you're with someone and they can read it, but you can't, take it. Go get them
Take it
tested
and
again.
go.
Yeah.
What do you think of mandatory learner signs for new drivers? I had just come back from a vacation. I was in Europe. I was in London, the UK, what do you call it, Ireland. I was in Scotland. I was in France. And I thought, what are all these stickers in the back? L's and N's and all these things identifying new drivers.
Well, Ontario started that when graduate licensing started 20 years ago, and they had ends, black N on a green background, and it was suction cups, so you can put in your back window or on your back fender, on your trunk lid. And the problem was, in a lot of cases, one of the problems was that no one really knew what it meant.
That's a
So
problem.
communication, yeah. So like, what's this N? Mm. So the other thing too is that, um, and I've experienced this as an instructor with signs on my vehicle of having, someone new driving, is that some people feel that they want to give them a hard time. And so as a parent or a friend who's just trying to help them stay safe on the road, you're not necessarily knowledgeable or equipped to deal with the moronic driver who's trying to create havoc. And I've had that happen, but my training was enough to say, all right, let's just pull to the side and stop, let them go past us, and and we have an extra brake on our side too if we have to.
I
So,
will.
sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say that when I see a driving school vehicle that's clearly marked as such, I give them a break. I know that they're learning. And it's like when I worked at McDonald's and it says I'm new and I'm trying. I had to wear a pin like that when I started there. It makes a difference. I think people do give you a break, but it's an interesting perspective to see that some people don't and they actually target you.
Yeah, they do. And we often, as in the driving school industry, we have the signs on for insurance reasons to warn the public, warning the public that you're practicing. I see the value in it. Unfortunately, that not everybody does. And I remember having one guy yell from their vehicle window, "Get off the road! Go learn in a parking lot."
Well,
No,
that's wonderfully
that's
friendly
yeah,
and supportive.
yeah. I
Uh,
appreciated that.
of course you did. We have a question about controlling your car in icy, snowy weather. That's a deep dive question. That's a whole other thing, but we can touch on it, I guess. We can have a whole
Yeah,
special just for winter driving.
yeah, we could, didn't we? So, first thing is winter tires. Winter tires are for the season, not just for the elements. It's a different rubber compound, wider grooves in the tread, which allows you to grip the road better. So definitely, and those who say they can't afford it, your all seasons will last twice as long because you're only going to have them on the vehicle for like 6 months versus 12. So the initial cost is one thing, but then you're going to spread that out over a bunch of winters. So
So,
control is one. It improves your fuel economy because you're not spinning your tires. Okay. Um, Realizing that you don't have as much traction as you normally have, so you gentle with your acceleration, brake early and more gently. A larger gap through the traffic to allow you to make turns for left turns and even right turns. You don't want to cut anybody off because they may not have winter tires and they hit their brakes because of you. They may slide into you, things like that. So, one of the best ways to control a skid is not to get into one.
I like that.
Yeah. So, and if it's really bad, don't drive. Like we
And that's,
cancel lessons.
I think that's one that people don't consider as an option.
Yeah.
People say, well, am I responsible if I run a red light? It was icy. I lost control and slid, but it's because it was slippery out.
Yeah.
And when I tell people that they're still going to get a ticket, they're still responsible. They look at me like I'm crazy but I had to go to the school, the store. No, if the driving conditions are such that it's unsafe, whatever you're doing is
Yeah.
unsafe.
Yeah. I mean, we would cancel lessons as instructors if it was like an ice storm but it's Canada. We have snow. We do lessons in the winter. That's not an issue. We had a blizzard one time and I had a call from a television station if I could come to the studio and talk about why we shouldn't drive. And I said, you hear the irony in your question? You want me to drive to the studio to tell people don't drive. I said, how about we do it
Or
via
remote.
video and remotely? And
Yes.
they kind of chuckled, said, yeah, okay, good point. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes we're missed by the logic, and sometimes just asking the question, you get the aha moment of, never mind.
yeah, that's right, that's right. But yeah, we could do a winter driving thing because there's just so much
Oh
involved
yeah.
in, you know,
So
it's in.
so we'll definitely do that because, like I said, I think this is something that we should do on a regular basis, and we'll have to figure out the frequency and what and how to structure it. But definitely need to keep doing these things because I want to be able to focus on new drivers, and I know that our other show goes way too deep in the weeds with things outside of that. You know, we talk about e-bikes. No, we want to specifically focus on new drivers who need the help and a place to go. And there's no better people in the world. Well, maybe somewhere, but the better
There are.
people on the screen than you and I. So
Yeah, so I mean, it's whether you're new, like I said, you know, you want to get your G1 or G2 or G, or you've just had your G for a little while. This stuff is really beneficial. So I want to bring back the fact that on our Trubicars social media, we have some great tips, video tips as well, that will help you. Oh, I didn't know that, and also help just keep watching it over and over again. You get an idea really how to perform and the knowledge that you need to become that safe driver, that new driver.
and that's the
Uh,
goal.
yeah, it
It's
is.
it's to be like Scott.
uh, your question that you have on the screen, should you turn with push and pull or hand over hand? Um, so we're an advocate of hand over hand. The push and pull, think of it this way. So the push and pull, you're pushing and pulling. There's a slight pause in between. Uh, the issue when you have a push and pull is your vehicle is moving continuously around the corner, but your steering is not. There's a slight pause in your steering for each time you do a push and then a pull. Hand over hand is a continuous steering technique where it matches the speed of the vehicle. So that's why you're gonna find that when you're learning to drive, it is a hand over hand technique. So there's through social media and whatnot. I'm on Twitter an awful lot, as you know, Sean. That there's a lot of people who are driving instructors in the UK that follow me, and I follow them, and we have talks, we have chats, things like that. And they teach push and pull in the UK. Um, I trained two people who were licensed driving instructors in the UK, and they
Hmm.
came to Ontario, and they both said that although they had difficulty at the beginning, they said it does make a smoother turn. And my grandfather was from Ireland, and he did a push and pull constantly. I don't know if it was just him or not. It was a little bit tricky, but each to their own. So one of the things is be smooth, be under control.
Is the push and pull a different way of saying the shuffle?
Yeah,
Because I'm okay. Because I've never heard it referred to as pushing and pulling.
a shuffle can be done at the sides. Push and pull is more from the top. So you kind of do, you stop pushing from at 12 and then you pull down from 12.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So both ways do cause a slight interference of your steering while you continuously go around the corner.
Right on. This user says, my driving school said every 6 seconds to check my mirrors. Is this true?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good time frame. Anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds is good. Things change quickly. Driving at 50K, you can just about reach another intersection in 5 seconds. So you check your mirror the first time, there's nothing there. You check it 10 seconds, and all of a sudden the car that came out of an intersection is there. The driver that changed lanes from the left to the right is now behind you, and they're following you close. They're now there. So things do change quite quickly, quicker than what we might imagine. So yeah.
I am checking here. We got some new questions. Boom, boom, boom. I'm not sure where Billy's going with this. Something about driving on the highway and a big piece of paper hits you. What should you do to get it out of your car? I don't know. I don't know if that's the right question for you. Probably a pull over. Let's see here.
So I can see if you're driving on the highway, there's a big paper that's on your
Windshield, I guess.
windshield. What should you do? Should you be getting out of the car? So if you're on a highway and you have a huge uh, something blocking your view, so one of the first things you want to do is check your mirror, see what's behind you, put your hazard lights on, and gently ease off. And remember that you still saw what was in front of you for the next approximately 15 seconds. By easing off the gas, you're increasing your falling distance, so you're hopefully not getting any closer to the vehicle in front. And ease over where you can safely pull over, remove what is on your windshield. Same thing as if your hood flies open, you would do the same thing.
And those things happen.
They do happen. They really do. Um, so I saw one of the questions before you posted up here, and I kind of want to address it before we do finish up, where they said about hand over hand causes you to put your hand over the airbag. Not a problem. They don't have an airbag. Can I shuffle and I can shuffle just as fast. So there you go. So let's talk about the airbag is wider than the circumference of your steering wheel. So whether or not you're holding the wheel at 10 and 2, 9 and 3, whatever the case is, if an airbag deploys, it's going to throw your arms out, whether you're shuffling or not, right? So let's operate the vehicle so that the airbag doesn't need to deploy. Let's keep that thought in mind first. And secondly, whether or not you're even the person who has their hand at 12 o'clock and they're going to bit themselves in the face, doesn't matter. So if you have your hands on the steering wheel, doesn't matter what position you're going. If you're going around a corner, if you're going around a corner and the airbag deploys, that's when the steering really causes the issue. It's how you hold the steering wheel, whether it's 10-2, 9 and 3, 8 and 4, whatever the case is. Hold the wheel so that way you have control over your vehicle. Because if you take a look at any information, the airbag is wider than your steering wheel. So I don't drive with fear of the airbag. I drive knowing that it's there to help protect me. But it's going to throw my arms out. And yes, I'll wrap my knuckles on the window if the window's up. But the ultimate is better than going through the windshield.
It's avoiding the collision as opposed to what's going to happen when you get into a collision.
That's correct. And it's looking at the alternate solution is drive a car to avoid problems. Don't drive a car. It's like wrapping yourself up in bubble wrap just in case. Well, I don't need to do that. I'm going to operate my vehicle safely. But that's also what, if you're the parent, you want to share this information with your new driver, that let's control the vehicle first, and remember that we have other things. So I have house insurance, I have fire insurance, I have car insurance, I have different insurances so that if something does go wrong. Our vehicle has insurance. We have airbags. We have a ton of airbags in our vehicles now. We have seat belts. But the thing is also about an airbag. I kind of keep moving in the direction of this. The airbag is called an SRS, supplementary restraint system. Supplementary. It's an add-on. Seatbelt's still your priority. And when my wife and I were traveling to the States, one of the states we went to, it was not mandatory for someone 18 and older to wear a seatbelt. Hello, this is not 1940 any longer. What's happening? Our vehicles are stronger, faster, more people on the road than ever before. Every year in Ontario, every year there's more than 100,000 new drivers on the road. We need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our families, right?
And you do that by paying attention to the information you can find on Trubicars and the traffic services page, because all of these things are resources for you to become and develop your skills and expand your knowledge about safety. Just one last question to end off from the the user content, because I want to chat about a couple of things again, referring to your social media and resources. But the question coming from TikTok is, what are some good ways for new drivers to practice their driving without going on roads?
So, if you're brand spanking new, I did mention this a little bit earlier. Get a feel of the gas and the brake and what the steering does in a big empty parking lot. Get the feel of it, maybe even 30 minutes. Make smooth stops. Good idea to keep your heel on the floor and then pivot your foot down as opposed to using your leg. That'll make a jerky stop. Once you feel comfortable doing that, choose a quiet subdivision. You are going to need to go on the road because corners are different on a subdivision than they are in a parking lot. If you are close to a brand new subdivision where there's no buildings yet, but there's the paved road and they have the curbs and so forth, go there. Go to the areas that have rounded curves. That way, if you move up the curb, it's like a chicane on a racetrack, then you're not going to cause any ill effects to your vehicle. You're not going to feel so bad. because you've just bumped into a curb, versus the old neighborhoods where it was a 90-degree curb and bust a tire or hurt a lineman if you hit too hard.
Bad things happen.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's all about practice. And if you start slow and move up, just like Scott said at the beginning of the show, uh, it's developing that comfort and confidence. So, yeah, parking lots are great to start, and then move up like to less populated side streets, and then as you develop the confidence, move up. But don't push yourself to go to the top first. You do need to build up. Otherwise, bad things happen because you're talking about curbs and chicanes versus bumpers of other cars and light posts. Bad things when you push yourself beyond. We also say don't drive beyond your ability. We also say don't drive faster than you can see. These are all things that are true. So just take it
Yeah.
one step at a time.
It's absolutely true. I mean, we talked about being a professional and choosing information from experts. And again, everybody's allowed their opinion, and you've got certain things that you believe from your experiences. And we spend time researching and finding out the best practices. We've done our due diligence to find out what's best in a nutshell. And you can take our advice or not. It's entirely, um, your choice, really, as it is. But one of the things about practice is the old saying that practice makes perfect is not necessarily true. Practice makes permanent. And if you practice something poorly, a technique that doesn't work, that becomes your habit, and that can be something that someone's opinion gave you. Oh, you should do this. You should do this. Okay, I get that, but let me explain why a different technique is better, right? So proper practice makes perfect as well. So getting proper information from an expert is really the best way to go, and then practice that information.
And the best expert you can get is likely going to be a professional driving instructor. And
Yeah.
we come all the way down, through all these tips, and they're great, and sometimes they're anecdotal because you're getting this other places, and you just want to confirm what you're hearing, or maybe you haven't had the opportunity to have professional training, and it makes a difference. So I'm a big proponent of it. So is Scott, and if you have the opportunity, do that. But in terms of coming to us for help, we'll be doing this again in the not too distant future, and we'll promote it. So please follow both of our accounts. Traffic Services is the Toronto Police Traffic Unit's account where we publish all of these shows and all of our daily lives for Ask a Traffic Cop. But the New Driver Show, and this is the first one, we'll be doing on a regular basis. How regular yet to be determined, but we will do it on a regular basis, and we will promote it before it happens, so you can put it in your calendar and make it happen. These episodes will also be available on a playlist on the Traffic Services YouTube page, and you can always come back here and watch it again. So go to Trubicars. Now, trubicars.ca is the website.
Trubicars.ca is the website where you can find different articles for tips. You can find information on how you can reach out to driving schools across Canada. We are across Canada. And we help affiliate you so that way you can get the best that you want. We also have our social media. We have TikTok, which is at Trubicars. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. I am at Safe Driver, as you see on the screen. My own videos and whatnot, which are different. So Trubicars is, as we said at the beginning, if you came in late, we're not a driving school. We're here to help you as a new driver. We want to help you succeed and reach the goal of becoming a licensed driver, becoming a safe driver. And I'd love it if you followed us on social media. And we also have a new podcast. I didn't talk about the podcast. We have a new podcast. We have a podcast called Trubicars, Ask the Expert, where we get questions from the general public about driving situations or something that no one else was able to answer. And that's part of our intro. Or you just don't like the answer that they gave you. You want to find out yourself. So you can send an email to podcast@trubicars.ca if you have a question, and it might make it to air. And the podcast usually come out on a Wednesday. 10, 12 minutes audio podcast, great to download. Right now there's 6 episodes. Like I said, it's fairly new.
New podcasts, 12 episodes, so 12 minutes an episode. That you can handle that. That's an easy, digestible episode.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
I love it. All right. that is the first episode done. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch. Really appreciate you taking the time. Please share this. Let people know that this information is available, that these social media accounts are there, and give us feedback. Go to Trubicars, leave some comments, ask some questions, tell us what you want to see on that account, on the Toronto Police account, and all of our accounts. These are all things we do for you to make you a better driver, to make you safer, to answer your questions, and to get you the information that you want.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions. Love them. Thanks,
Yes.
Sean.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, and we'll do it again soon. We'll talk, we'll promote, and we'll also go for lunch because that has to happen.
There you go. Thanks for
Always,
putting this on.
food makes traffic talk better.
A full belly. I'm good.
All right, take care, everyone. Be safe. Drive sober, park legally, and practice sensibly.
There you go.
Any other magical words?
All is beautiful.
Sounds good. Take care.